So hi everyone, welcome to the Everything Goes podcast. I'm Omar, your host. I know we have a lot of new viewers here, so thank you for joining the channel and joining the podcast. I hope you like it. If you do, subscribe. If you don't, that's also fine. Don't worry about it. Now, because this is the first time for a lot of people, I'll do a little bit of intro. Basically, this podcast, this channel, is just to showcase how amazing and diverse ARMY are. Because any idiot can open a YouTube channel. And just because I decided to do it doesn't make my thoughts, my ideas, what I have to say any more important than anyone else. So this whole channel is just for ARMY to geek out loud and not just by text about anything BTS related, whether it's stuff that makes us angry or stuff that makes us happy. This is what this channel is about. So anyone can be a guest here. Feel free to DM me. Doesn't matter how many followers you got. And that's basically it. Now, these past few days, so when you're seeing this podcast when it comes out, you might have seen that we're kind of doing a project here where should we ever be able to get this channel monetized, the money from this channel will go directly to fund ARMY comeback goals. So whether it's for funds for Bangtan or Bora Bangtan or Bora funds, sorry, all those money will go there. So this is, by watching the videos here, it's another way to support the BTS comeback. But putting all that aside, let's get started. We have an amazing guest here that I know everyone's really excited to talk to. So we have Bryan Rolli here. Hi, Bryan.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for this.
I apologize in advance if I have shifty eyes during this. I'm not really sure where to look during Zoom interviews. So I don't know if I should look at the camera, if I should look at you, or somewhere else. So bear with me, everyone. Thank you. We'll get through this together.
I do the same, like, because the camera is above my computer screen, and also questions here on the side, so it's like a whole mess. It'll be fine. So usually when I start this podcast, I ask how you became an ARMY. But with you, I'm not sure whether you are one or not. So are you an ARMY?
I kind of anticipated that question before we started this chat today, and I think it's kind of a funny question because what does it mean to me when I look at what it means to be an ARMY? It just means, are you a person who is a fan of BTS, who appreciates the art that they make and the people that they are, and just the value that they add to the world. And if those are the only requirements, then yes, that would be me. But again, I feel like it's like for certain people, when you ask that, it's like a heavy question or an ambiguous question. And maybe it's because people who are not in the fandom don't really get it. In fact, you probably have a better way of explaining it or a better definition for it than I do.
I actually don't, because I think it's very subjective. Like, you can be voting for everything and supporting and buying merch and doing all those things and consider yourself an ARMY, and you can just listen to the music and appreciate what I have to say. And I think that's being an ARMY too. I think we all decide for ourselves whether we are just casual fans that just have some songs on the playlist but not really get invested in it, or whether we really care about it. And I think it's different for each individual. I don't think there's like a grade of how much of an ARMY you are. I think as long as you love the music and you appreciate it and understand and like really get into it, then I think that qualifies being an ARMY. But I think it's like subject for me. I like being a fan of something this much. I've never been the girl to geek out over like boy bands and stuff, despite growing up in the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC era. So saying like I'm a fan of a boy band was like a hurdle to pass. And only when I joined Twitter did I start feeling like an ARMY, because I felt like a part of something. But again, I think it's like for each individual is what they decide.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that music fandoms have evolved so much, especially in the last few years. And certainly social media has a big impact on that, just the way that they interact with artists and with each other and with members of other fandoms. I think some people think that different fandoms are mutually exclusive. You know, you can be an army, but that means that you can't be a directioner or a Swiftie or a Barb or something else. I don't think I subscribe to that idea. I'm a diehard fan of so many different types of artists across genres, across decades. And so to have to limit myself to one fandom would be impossible. There's no way that I could do that.
That's understandable. I don't think anyone is asking anyone to like say, "Oh, you only love this kind of music. You can only listen to BTS from now on."
Right. You know, for any artist, what kind of life would that be? There's too much music out there to only listen to one.
Did you get a chance to see BTS perform
Um, when? Which time?
in concert ever, or even on TV, but not on American award shows?
Oh, okay. I don't think so. I've never seen them live. I have not gotten to do that yet. I think all of the performances I've seen have probably been on award shows or American stages. Yeah.
Okay, I kind of figured you would answer that, and I can't stress this enough, especially someone who just loves music, especially like rock and roll and metal and all that, to check out their MMA 2019 performance, 2018 as well, but 2019. It's a Korean award show, and what they do in award shows there is so far beyond what any Western award show has ever done. Like, if you'll take all the Grammy performances from last year, that's like
Mm.
one BTS performance in MMA 2019. They got 37 minutes to perform.
What? It's like
Yes,
a whole show.
it's like a whole show, and it had a somber balladic dance and a completely rock with electric guitars, and it had hard rap and anything else, and like this extremely poppy song and everything else in between. It's just a spectacle and amazing, and they do it once just for an award show, and it's unbelievable. I can't stress enough how much you should watch that.
Wow. Okay. Is that available on
YouTube.
YouTube? Okay. I'm gonna write it down.
I'll send you a link. Don't worry.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. That sounds great. I would love to check that out.
Yeah, it's really like you'll see that and they're like, oh, then what are we doing? Like, why
Yeah.
aren't American or other West award shows aren't like that?
I think that just about every time I watch a Western award show with the like super corny skits and million commercial breaks and everything else, I'm like, can we just get some performances in here? The music, please.
Yeah, and even like the speeches, because the American award shows like have that time limit for speeches. And I keep thinking like this is an artist like the pinnacle of their career. They worked so hard for that Oscar or that Grammy, and all they get is like 1 minute to say thank you to their parents or something.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate.
Yeah. And half the awards, like some of them pretty big ones too, they're not even televised. Like they all happen off camera, like in the afternoon before it starts.
Yeah, such a shame. So awesome. Did you buy a ticket for the one concert?
I have not yet. I think I'm gonna have schedule conflicts the day of, but if I mean, I assume they're still on sale, like up to the date, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if my schedule does clear up, I think I'm gonna have to buy a ticket.
At your time, there's on Saturday at 5 a.m., which is terrible, but also at 9 p.m.
Okay, 9 p.m. is more doable.
Then on Sunday, it's at 9 p.m. You
Yeah.
have the option. Just so you know, no pressure.
Cool. Yeah, my friend actually, she sent me, I think she got like a Bands in Town email about BTS playing a show in your area, and it was like 4 a.m. She was like, "Why the heck are they doing this?" I'm like, "Don't worry, it's not actually, they're not here at 4 in the morning, but yeah, it's a dedication to be up for that one."
Yeah. Yeah. How did you get introduced to BTS? Like, was it through work or was it just casual listening? Or
I first became aware of BTS in fall of 2017. So about 3 years ago, I was interning at Billboard, and BTS was getting ready to release Love Yourself, Her. And it was their first album that cracked the top 10 of the Billboard 200. And so there was a ton of coverage on them. I was interning with another writer who was a big BTS fan. a big fan of a lot of different K-pop artists, and so she kind of was filling us in about like why culturally this was significant. And I had some questions, but at the time, the whole thing was unfamiliar to me. And so with my first brush with BTS, I kind of thought, all right, K-pop, whatever, cool, not my thing, happy for them. I'm gonna go on my way, not a big deal. But over the next several months, as they were preparing to release Love Yourself Tear, you let me know. But that's when I started, shortly before that, I had started working for Forbes as a contributor. And so I was in the business of covering major achievements on the pop charts, artists who were doing extraordinary things and, breaking records. And BTS was beginning to fit that criteria. They were starting to really experience their breakthrough in the States. They began their streak of #1 albums on the Billboard 200. And suddenly, they were everywhere. They were performing at award shows. Tons of mainstream publications started to give them coverage. And so I said, hey, I want a piece of that. I want to write about them too. And so I started writing about the pre-release records that they had broken with Tear. And shortly after that, I think a few months later, that summer, they put out Answer. Idol was a huge hit for them. The album itself, of course, went to #1. And that summer, they also sold out their first US stadium show at Citi Field within, I think, like 30 or 45 minutes. And so, the spring and summer of 2018 was just a huge time for BTS. And that's when I really started to get invested in their music and also, I guess, kind of the concept of them as a cultural phenomenon here in the States.
Yeah, that's quite a journey. Like you were there right from the start of their US breakthrough.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because I still feel like, this band has such a rich history. They have such a huge catalog of music. I still feel kind of like I'm new to this whole thing. There's certainly stuff that I am still catching up on. There's plenty that I don't know yet, especially pre-2018, pre-2017 especially. But yeah, I've been really invested in writing about this group for a little over 2 years now. And it's been really rewarding to watch them flourish.
That's awesome. And I think like it always feels like they're still not at their peak. Like they still haven't reached it. There's still so much that they can. Yeah.
It's kind of scary, honestly. It's like a force of nature. There's always pressure when artists put out new music to, hit a new milestone, break a new record. How many copies does this thing have to sell, or how many streams does it have to get to be considered a success? And at a certain point, every artist is going to plateau. That's just inevitable. That's how the industry works. But with BTS, I get the sense that they are nowhere near their peak. And the way that ARMY talks about, these milestones, it's like there's never a sliver of doubt that, this next comeback, this next album or single is going to be bigger than the one that came before it. Just the confidence in that fandom is amazing.
Yeah. So these days, because we always talk about that single, like everyone releases a single and like the rest of the songs in the album don't get so much attention or any attention almost. Like people really concentrate on that one single. And BTS, as opposed to that, usually have such conceptual albums. They always release more than one video. They always, even if just the fans and it's not something that's like supposed to chart on Hot 100 or something, they always make sure to put so much emphasis on the album as a whole, which is something we haven't seen that much anymore. Mm-hmm. Do you think that has an impact on how much albums they sell, or how like why are they doing it so differently than anyone else?
Yeah. Well, as far as the impact on album sales, I think it's kind of a self-perpetuating cycle. It's like BTS makes albums that are conceptually and musically rich, and so fans buy a lot of them. And then fans buy a lot of them, and so then BTS continues to make music that is like of a certain caliber. I think like both parties have kind of come to expect a certain level of quality there. And obviously they've just like continued to reap the benefits from that. I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Why do other artists don't bother with that part? Right? Like they release songs, they have full albums, but they don't really put an emphasis on an album being a playlist as opposed to, or a concept as opposed to a collection of songs.
Right. Yeah, well, it's unfortunate, but I think that in the last several years, I think the pop music model, and when I say pop music, I'm including any sort of popular music, so especially hip hop as well. I think it's kind of reverted back to like the old days of like the 50s and 60s, where an album was pretty much defined as a couple of popular singles and a bunch of filler, especially because streaming plays such an important role in music sales these days. It's really easy to just like crank out an album with 18 to 20 songs that are, 2.5 minutes. They all kind of sound the same. There's a handful of singles that dominate the charts forever. And then the rest of it is kind of just background music. You can put it on a playlist. You could listen to it at a party. You could like play it when you're studying or doing work or at the gym or whatever. And it's like, even if you're not listening attentively, that artist is still getting your streams and they're still getting your money from it. So I think, and I mean, obviously we see that divide come up a lot with BTS. Like BTS is a largely sales driven band when it comes to like how they chart in the United States. That's not really the norm these days. And so I think, again, I wouldn't say that like they're making music, that they're making these like really conceptually rich albums just so that they can sell more copies. But like, I certainly think that is a byproduct of them making albums like that.
I would agree. Like we buy it because the music is so, we know what we're getting would be a full concept with that we like each song. Even if we don't necessarily like every song on the album, we'll probably like most. Just making sure I'm recording. Yeah, I think to go back a bit to what you said before about the fact that these days music is broken down into numbers, right? And everyone looks at how much you get, how much you sold, and kind of the artistry of it is a bit lost, or it gets pushed down, all for the sake of reaching that number one spot. And BTS themselves have talked about it, not now, but like back in 2018, when they got that number one album, they were like, we achieved everything we thought we would and more. Like no other K-pop artist, Korean artist got an album at number one. No one sold out arenas back then like they did. They were walking this path that no other Korean artists have walked. And they were like, okay, we got farther than we thought. What comes next? Like, are we still excited about this? Does this still interest us? And their whole song, Black Swan, is exactly about that. It's about that moment where music just doesn't do it for you anymore. But I think for them, because they're so in tune with themselves and they stop and think about it and listen to it, they don't really get caught up in those numbers. It's a nice bonus. You even hear Yoongi say that they want to be nominated for a Grammy so they can perform at the Grammys. It's not so they can win at the Grammys, which obviously they want. They want to win a Grammy. But he specifically said, I want to be nominated so I can perform on that stage. I want to perform solo, just BTS on that stage. And that's just them. They're all about the music. They all went into it, not by accident, but because this was their passion. And I think the way they were raised as a group, they managed to keep that passion, which for a lot of artists, unfortunately, because their companies just sell their music for nothing with those stupid bundles that completely cheapen everything they do, all in order to sell more, just the music isn't there anymore. So yeah, I don't know, that's just my thoughts on it. Like,
I really do appreciate every time. It's like every time there's a new milestone that BTS reaches, the way that they respond to it, there's so much humility and gratefulness for their fans and for the opportunities that those new records will present. Like you said, so much of their mission is just to reach other fans, to be able to perform their music on the biggest stages and the biggest platforms possible, solely for the purpose of letting other people experience that and take part in that joy. You're right. There's nothing, obviously, when you're one of the biggest musical acts in the world, you're going to have to consider things like album sales and ticket sales. And obviously there's a whole business to this. But, when I look at BTS and when I listen to them talk about their career, or participate in talk show interviews or anything, nothing about it seems cynical or jaded. It seems like they really want to be there, and they have an appreciation for these opportunities and a real hunger to keep performing, to keep breaking new ground, and that's inspiring to watch.
It really is. Have you ever seen a fandom that acts like ARMY does, be disorganized and this set on achieving goals that maybe even BTS didn't set themselves?
No, certainly not at this level. I mean, I've seen, I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and so I see all sorts of different music fandoms, normally just like fighting with each other in comments. But as far as like setting up like mutual funds to give out to people to help, download music, and like organizing all those streaming parties and everything like that, like I have never seen that sort of organization or that level of like mobilization among a fandom. Certainly not.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Like, what makes BTS have such a fandom that wants to do all those things?
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost it comes down to the music. Like these fans care about the music, the art that is being put out, and like it has a profound impact on them personally. So that's where it starts. But I think there's also this certain level of kind of feeling like fans and the band members are sort of in this thing together. And what I mean by that is like, obviously BTS has had to overcome a lot of hurdles when it comes to breaking into the Western music world and different US markets. And so I think fans see that and they kind of took it upon themselves to say like, okay, if they're not getting the attention or the exposure or the treatment they deserve, like we're going to just force people to pay attention to them by mobilizing and showing them just how big and how passionate this fan base is.
Yeah, I would say that that's completely 100% because one of the first things you learn when you go into the fandom, no matter at what stage you joined, is first you learn the members, you learn a bit about them, but you learn their struggles and what they've been through. And it's a lot, and it creates this certain need for you. First, we as people usually root for the underdog. Mm-hmm. But even without that mentality, it's just you have this video footage of all their struggles, of how they were invited to awards show or to shows, and then were told, oh no, you're not going to perform tonight. So they went after the show ended because they knew they had fan in the crowd. So after the confetti fell and everyone left, they got on stage and performed. So you see the struggles, you've seen what they've been through and how they were mocked and disregarded and treated like they weren't artists, they were barely idols. And it creates this need to give back and to appreciate their work and make sure that it's noticed. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's definitely sort of, instead of pushing them up the mountain or having them drag the fandom, it's like walk side by side up the mountain together.
Yeah, that's rewarding. It's got to be rewarding for them. It's rewarding as a fan to watch that happen. And it's inspiring just to see, they handle that with such humility and grace and gratefulness at every step, which again is something that you see that in other artists, but I don't know if you see it quite to that degree very often. So it's a great thing to watch.
Yeah. Speaking of like older sales, the world has been struck by COVID, and the music market, like every other market, has suffered because of it. And we know from other artists plain out saying it that most of the money they make is not from selling their music, it's from selling t-shirts actually and tour tickets. And one of them even said, I'm doing the tour so I can sell more t-shirts because that's how I make my money. Mm-hmm. And obviously now that's no longer an option so much. As opposed to that, BTS has managed to, and Big Hit as an extension of that, has actually reported half-year earning that is in profit, despite COVID, despite canceling a stadium world tour, which probably wasn't very cheap.
No, it was not.
How do you think like the Western music market is going to recover from it? And do you think they're going to try and simulate or do something a bit more close to what Big Hit does?
Yeah. Well, first off, I have no idea how artists of different statures are going to recover, and the record labels and all the people involved in the music industry. I know for smaller artists who are doing club or theater tours, or are on those who are on independent labels, it's going to be super hard for them to recover. I mean, this could be like financially ruinous for some smaller artists. Bigger artists, like you said, they have other ways to keep fans engaged and to keep making money. And somebody like Taylor Swift or Harry Styles or Travis Scott, these people are not like in danger of going broke or losing all their money because they weren't able to tour. They're going to find ways around that. But it's still obviously going to be really, really difficult. As far as emulating the Big Hit model, I don't know. It's really the way that BTS has been able to grow in stature over the last 6 to 9 months, and for Big Hit to be able to increase its profits this year, I think that speaks to the relation. Well, it's a couple things. I think one, BTS was on a really steep upward trajectory in the United States already, and they had so much momentum going into March when the pandemic struck here, that really there was nothing that was going to crush that momentum, at least not fully. In fact, I think when they had to cancel their tour and change all their plans, I think really that just built more anticipation for whatever they did do next among their fan base. And also I think it speaks to the kind of unique dedication and enthusiasm that their fans have for them. We saw that with the way Dynamite had been performing in sales, but really with their with the Bang Bang Con that they did back in I think it was June, that broke a digital attendance record. Really, it's just like anything that they do at this point, like fans are going to show up for it, and more fans are going to keep showing up for it. Because I think people really look to BTS as like more than just a disposable pop group. Like the music and the art and the things that they put out into the world, they have value to their fans, and so like I think they really cling to those as kind of life preservers, especially in difficult times like this. And certainly, other artists do have that relationship with their fans, but I don't think it's very common. And I think that's why we've seen, just continued success for BTS throughout these extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, I would agree. Before we go towards those new articles that you wrote, let's talk about, like you said, contextualizing BTS success with regards to the Western industry. And how amazing is it that Dynamite got #1 on week 4?
I mean,
Week 4, week 5, what week are we? Week
5,
5,
right? Yeah, week 5.
Are we almost #1? 5.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of at least in 2020 and maybe beyond, it's unprecedented. Again, Dynamite is the only pure pop song that has spent multiple weeks at #1 on the Hot 100 this year. Roddy Ricch did it with The Box for like 11 weeks or something like that. Rockstar did it. WAP did it. The Weeknd's Blinding Lights did it. But this is the first straight up pop song that has done it. And even if it hadn't hit #1 again in its 5th week, Dynamite's performance on the Hot 100 has been historic. When you look at the rest of BTS's songs. I mean, BTS were not strangers to charting songs in the top 10. They had just reached a career high peak earlier this year with On, and they hit #4. But their previous singles that peaked high and debuted high, they typically fell pretty hard in their 2nd or 3rd weeks. To have a song that stayed in the top 2 for its first 5 weeks, and that did so based almost entirely off digital downloads, that's unprecedented in 2020. I think Dynamite sold 153,000 downloads this week. Its 5th week sales were bigger than the sales of any other song in 2020. That's amazing.
It was bigger than the 2nd week sales as well.
Wow. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Do you think that the success of Dynamite, let's put radio aside for a second. Like we've seen Big Hit really do something different this time. Usually we don't have that many remixes. We don't get the vinyl. We don't get the cassette. We don't get this. This time it felt like Big Hit knew that Army would support the
Mhm.
song as much as they can, and they decided to give us the tools to do that.
Mhm.
Um, would you say that's something that you see as well, or something different? Or...
Oh yeah, I mean, from the beginning, the promotional campaign for Dynamite was out of this world. I remember when I saw, I think it was Hits Daily Double reported that Columbia Records had chartered a bunch of buses to drive around the country to show the song, to preview it for radio programmers to make them want to play it during its first day. I was on the web store multiple times when the vinyl and cassettes got restocked, and then I went back to check like an hour later, and they were already gone. um, just all of the, I mean, I was watching at midnight when the music video premiered. I watched it break records in real time. um, yeah, I think that Big Hit and Columbia, just they knew they had this thing that had been building and bubbling for years, and the excitement among the army had reached a fever pitch. BTS were the biggest that they had ever been, and they decided to pull out all the stops to really push this over the edge. I mean, even the fact that this is their first all English single, that they were courting radio, knowing that they had that in their pocket to get radio to be more willing to play the song. That on top of the fact that they had all the physical editions and the remixes available, I like the way you put it. Yeah, they gave fans the tools to support them in a number of different ways. And obviously, it paid off. It continues to pay off.
Okay, so now let's talk about a bit about what happened this past week, because we had two big, as you can see, the fandom here, like we moved through stuff very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the easiest one, like the remixes. Do you think there's something wrong with putting out a million remixes?
No. Um, just point blank, no. But the reason I think that, first and foremost, is nobody is being misled here. There's no confusion about what your money is going toward. If BTS didn't have the fandom to pull that off, or if they thought, people for some reason were not going to be receptive to that promotional tactic, then they wouldn't have done it, or people would have responded by not buying them. But clearly, they took a calculated, I wouldn't even say risk, they made a calculated decision based on their fans listening and buying habits, and it paid off. Again, like I wrote yesterday, every artist, when you are performing at a certain level of fame, when you're an artist who's accustomed to charting #1 hits on the Hot 100 or on the Billboard 200, you're going to have to play this game, and the only difference is how you choose to play that game. I don't think that there's anything worse about selling multiple remixes of a song than there is about bundling your music with merchandise or with concert tickets, or creating reverse engineering some sort of viral dance or social media challenge to accompany your song. In fact, I think that making remixes, like I said in my article, I think that's more honest than all of those other tactics, because again, you're giving people the opportunity to buy music, which last time I checked is what the entire purpose of the Billboard charts is, to gauge what music is popular.
I would agree. Why do you think there was so much anger about it? And why, two things. Why do you think Billboard felt the need to emphasize it regarding BTS when they don't usually do that? And
Mm-hmm.
why was there so much anger about BTS using remixes to chart?
Well, I want to be transparent up front. I'm also a Billboard contributor. And so I have I have nothing negative to say about Billboard, my editors or my peers at Billboard. And as far as, their social media teams go, I have no idea why they make, any decision one way or another. I did think it was curious that they did tweet that, just because, I haven't seen them make clarifying tweets like that before about other artists who have, used other tactics to get their songs or their albums to #1. It's totally possible that they have tweeted them and I just never noticed it. In which case, that's fine. I'm not I won't, make a big claim about that one way or the other. But I guess I I guess some people's problem with it was the fact that, how many remixes or how many total versions of the song are available now? Is it 10?
I think so. I think so. But yeah.
Right. So I guess, so I've seen the argument from some people that, because up to 4 sales of a certain song or album count toward Billboard, because there are 10 different versions of the song available, you can, 4 times 10 means that there are up to 40 different opportunities to buy Dynamite and, have 40 different sales count toward the Hot 100. And I guess, that made certain people upset because they just thought that 40 different versions of a song or 40 chances to help it chart on the Hot 100 was just too much. That was crossing a line for certain people. That seems to be part of the argument, particularly from people in other music fandoms.
Isn't that how Old Town Road charted as well, right?
Yeah, I was just on Twitter right before this, and I did see somebody else mention that I think there were 19 different remixes of Old Town Road. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure the one that became a #1 hit was the primary remix with Billy Ray Cyrus on it. Yeah, it's so many artists do different, club remixes, dance house remixes, all sorts of different remixes on their hits. The difference is you normally don't hear about many of them because not many fans are very eager to tune into these, relatively unknown remixes. Whereas with BTS, people wanted to check out all the different remixes. And I mean, I've always maintained that whatever you do with your hard-earned money is your decision. No one can tell you how to spend that. And if Army wants to put $10, $20, $30, $40 toward supporting BTS and supporting Dynamite and helping that song chart better, then they are fully within their means and their rights to do so.
I would agree. Like it's every person does whatever they want with their money. Anyway, I wanted to ask that in Forbes, how does it work? Like we've seen sometimes you write something, sometimes Hugh McIntyre writes something, sometimes Tamar Herman or Jeff Benjamin write stuff. Like how does it work?
Yeah, well, we are all part of the Forbes contributor network. None of us are on staff at Forbes. And so there's a huge network of contributors for all different topics across their website. So we're part of the Hollywood and entertainment pool. We're kind of, we're some of the, I guess, primary music writers. Tamar and Jeff focus on a lot more K-pop acts. Hugh and I are more, I would say, generalist. We cover a lot of different stuff that's going on in the charts. I'll occasionally go into more rock or punk or alternative territory. But lately, as I'm sure you've noticed, I focused a lot of my coverage on BTS. But yeah, we kind of, I think we've kind of carved out, and this is kind of all unspoken. We communicate over email sometimes, but I think we've all kind of carved out different lanes for ourselves. Hugh is great at hopping on, what is happening on the charts day to day, week to week. Tamar and Jeff, they do a lot of interviews and just great in-depth reported coverage of a variety of artists. I do some of the chart and milestone stuff as well. But I also have a real passion for kind of digging into, I guess, the value behind what BTS is accomplishing in the music industry, trying to put it in context with what other artists in the industry are doing at a similar scale, and just why exactly that is important. In a couple of the different places that I write for regularly, being plugged into social media and writing kind of through that internet lens is a big part of my work. And so that translates to Forbes as well. And so I really like to, keep an eye out on Twitter to see like, what is kind of the cultural conversation right now? What is the thing that has people really excited or really fired up? And if there's a way that I can relate that to, the actual business of music, then that's a win. That's kind of what I was able to do in 2 of my recent stories that I know you read, and they were both really rewarding to write.
They were very rewarding to read as well. Like, I think I will be, like, people will immediately all unfollow me if I will not tell you that we really appreciate you putting that effort and writing those writing your articles in general. We really appreciate the spin you put on it, because before you started writing these sort of articles, we were very happy when we got like an article that was just plain facts. Just give us the facts. We're good with that. But the usual people that write that started doing stuff like has the biggest comeback, whose collaboration is the biggest, and that's just pointless. I hate comparing. Like you said, people can like many groups. There's no sense in comparing two acts. But seeing you actually take into account exactly like how BTS contributions to music is on the world scale, and all that stuff that's going on, on the internet, and seeing how people relate to them and dismiss them or appreciate them, and you giving that extra depth, that extra oomph in an article, we really appreciate that, and it was so needed. So thank you, really.
Well, thank you, really, to anyone who's watching this, or to anyone who's read and had anything positive to say, or shared it, or just enjoyed it. Seriously, thank you. The reason I write is so that people have something to read, and I really appreciate y'all's feedback. And again, it's really gratifying to kind of be able to, again, contextualize and voice the the concerns, and just I feel like it's like checking the temperature of the fandom, or of the Twitter community, and just being able to put that out on a platform such as Forbes. I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to ask you about working at Forbes. Is it hard to get an article approved? Is there a lot of like bosses and managers like making sure it's what they want you to say, or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I won't get super specific about that, but long story short, at this point, no, it's not that difficult. The way that the contributor network works is that you apply to be a part of it, and then once you're accepted, which there are hundreds, maybe thousands of contributors in a variety of different subjects, but once you are accepted, you kind of have agency to write within your swim lane, or within your kind of area of expertise, kind of as much as you want and whenever you want. I think there has to be some sort of business, or kind of financial element to it, but that's kind of implicit in anything that happens in the music business, especially with a group like BTS, because so much of the news about them is like different records they're breaking, different sales milestones they're achieving. So yeah, at that point, no, there's not a whole lot of hoops that I have to jump through. It just becomes a matter of like, is this story something that I feel would be appropriate fit for Forbes, that would make sense for me to tell, and kind of splitting that difference between like, all right, is this like some sort of quick newsy article about like a record they broke, that has to go up like super fast, or is it something that is like a more extended take that kind of ties in more of the social context, like some of the pieces that we talked about last week, something that I can take a little bit longer to like formulate my argument, and give it the time and space it deserves.
Okay. Do your have your articles, like, have your peers read them? Like, did you get any feedback on them? Good, bad?
Not really from any of my other Forbes colleagues. We kind of all, we have different schedules and like different sort of lanes that we stay in, and so we have like daily emails where we'll discuss different stories, but that's kind of it. We don't have a whole lot of interaction on a regular basis. So I've gotten some feedback from other peers within, music journalism, and the media, mostly on Twitter, and sometimes on LinkedIn, which is always kind of funny, but that's about it.
Is there a push for certain articles to get written?
What do you mean?
I don't know, like, does Forbes ever say like, oh, we want this kind of article, or it's just you submit whatever you want and they decide whether it fits them or not?
Yeah, I mean, we have suggestions of like important news throughout the day, like top stories, but very rarely do they have to do with like BTS, or if they do, it's like kind of like it's like the one story of the day. Like here's the like general news. Like when they postpone their tour dates, it's like, all right, the big news of the day is that they postpone their tour. And then if you want to do like other takes or angles on that, that's kind of up to each writer to use the news as like a jumping off point to dive into, you know, deeper topics or other angles. And that's what I like to do.
Yeah. And we appreciate it.
Happy to help, happy to serve.
Yeah. What would you say is the best way to support an article?
Just click it, just read it. And you know, I make a point to share the stuff that I write on Twitter. And so, you know, engaging with that, liking it and retweeting it is always a great way to help. You know, when some of the bigger BTS fan accounts or like BTS news accounts share stuff, that gives it a huge boost, and that is really helpful for me. You know, the opportunity to build my personal number of followers is always helpful because it's kind of a snowball effect with like the future things that I publish. So that's always helpful. If you like what you see, feel free to follow me on Twitter. But yeah, you know, just giving it a read.
Okay.
I would also say, if you do feel compelled to share it on social media, linking is more effective than screenshots, just because with screenshots, if anything does have to be changed, then the screenshots are kind of stuck there forever. And then people can just read the screenshots without actually clicking on the link, and that kind of defeats the purpose.
As a fandom, we usually try to screenshot the bad articles and click on the good ones.
I have noticed that, and I appreciate that. That's a good tactic.
It's sort of our way of managing, like, or like saying like, no, you did bad here.
It's like the same as if somebody makes a bad tweet and you don't want to engage with the tweet, but you want people to see just exactly why it's bad. It's like take a screenshot instead of retweeting it.
Yeah, exactly. So we really try, like, and you'll see under a lot of articles. I don't think it happens under yours because we usually trust yours, but in a lot of articles from like CNN, BBC, Variety, you would see under the article itself, people asking, is this safe to read? And people,
yeah, I've seen that.
Safe, this is safe, this is not safe, stay away. Wait for the screenshots.
Yeah, there's like entire accounts dedicated to just screening different articles, right?
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Yeah, well, we learned the hard way. Because what happens is usually you comment and you engage with it, and then it's just it gives them like more incentive to keep doing it. So if we screenshot it and post it somewhere else, then you take the engagement away from the original post and do the engagement on different tweets. So it does still keep the conversation going. We still discuss it, but it's not under the original tweet, so they don't get the engagement.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, there have been times where, you know, the more people in the fandom that I follow, I've seen like entire conversations dragged out where I understand that everybody is talking about the same thing, but I don't actually know what they're talking about. And then I have to like go back and try to find the source of it, which normally happens when people are upset about something. It's almost like an entire universe of like subtweets about an article or something that they thought was a bad take.
Yeah, it really rolls so quickly. It's very hard to find like where it started from and how it progressed.
Yeah, I feel like a detective.
What do you think about the way the Western music coverage, like the way all these the music newspaper outlets, like the way they cover it now? Because we've seen it all go all over the place. I'm not just talking about BTS, but like in general. Sometimes they go a little bit more towards the tabloid side of it. Sometimes it's just about the numbers. Do you see a lot more than I do about what's going on? Do you see a lot more in-depth articles or more of the tabloid kind?
I think the ratio is becoming more favorable. I mean, there's going to be plenty of websites and publications that, you know, that's kind of their beat. The more either the tabloidy or the kind of like, you know, the BuzzFeed sort of coverage. And I don't say that to, you know, denigrate BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed's a great website. They do a variety. They provide a lot of great services to readers. But obviously you're not going to get the same depth out of an article that's like, RM did this to his hair right now and I literally can't breathe. You know, like that. there's a time and place for that sort of coverage, and that's fine. People want that. But I think more mainstream U.S. And Western publications are realizing that BTS is a force to be reckoned with culturally, musically, business-wise, and so it would behoove them to get on board and to start covering them. I do think I see more places that cover them objectively now than maybe a few years ago. But obviously, there's still publications that feel the need to get their digs in or write dismissively toward them. But honestly, I do think that a lot of the publications I read, the music-oriented ones, they're doing their best to treat them as a cultural sensation and to write about them with respect and with knowledge and appreciation.
I think Army is a bit more wary about articles these days, or for the last few years, because we had all those K-pop experts that very quickly took that K-pop knowledge they had and immediately placed it on BTS. For the worst, obviously, it's never for the best. And we had even the Hollywood Reporter. Did you read that article? So it's a masterpiece in journalism.
I did not, because I knew that I wouldn't be happy if I did read it. I read excerpts. I read the screenshots that people shared on Twitter, and I read the feedback on Twitter. Yeah. And I kind of thought, you know what? I've only got so many hours in the day. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff on the internet that I could read, and I don't think that this is gonna add value to my life. But no, I do know. I kind of get the gist of the article, the dismissiveness and the laziness with which the whole story was approached, and I mean that is infuriating. That everyone's got their reasons for writing like that. Maybe they wanted to be glib, or they thought it was cute or funny. But I mean, admitting that you don't care about your source enough to do your homework that's not cool.
Yeah, I think like it especially hurt because it was like an exclusive. They flew him to Korea, like he got to sit and eat with them, and most journalists don't get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. This was a cover for the Grammys. Like it was for the Grammys to take notice of this band, and instead it was so dismissive because it came out right when the Grammy people were supposed to add their nominations. Mm-hmm. At the same time we are right now, basically.
Yeah.
So now Variety is doing a cover story on them, thankfully, but hopefully it seems good.
I didn't know that. That should be. I'll be excited to read that.
Yeah, I think so. They said it was like the Grammy issue, and the BTS are on the cover, and they did like tidbits from the interview with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it seems like actually talking to them about their music and what they do, which is what we thought that article was going to be, but it wasn't. But last week I asked you, what do you think is the trajectory of BTS in media is going to be? And you said, I think it's going to be more positive and people are going to take them more seriously now. And I told you that it looks like that's exactly what's going to be, because we're getting the Variety article. And then the Variety article, and it wasn't what we expected it to be.
Yeah.
Because I did a whole thread about it.
Yeah, I mean, okay, look, from my understanding, people were saying that was an article that was like aimed at industry folks and professionals in the music business, and so that's fine, I guess. I understand why a publication like Variety would be writing a piece like that. That's more, I guess, kind of their purview anyway. But at that point, it just makes me ask, why Variety? Why was Variety the one to do this extensive cover story on BTS, if that was the case? I read the cover, and then I read the supplemental interviews that they put out afterwards, and I don't know. I kind of feel like it felt like a bit of a disjointed package. I don't really. I don't get why a publication hasn't yet just, sat down with the band and done like a full actual profile on them. Not on all the stuff surrounding them, but like actually on them. I think I mean, I guess the Hollywood Reporter tried to do that a couple years ago, but I'm talking about doing it the right way, obviously. I think when I think about my favorite music cover stories and artist profiles of all time, they're the ones where I felt like the writer was so familiar with the subject and had so much intimate access into their lives for just a bit that I felt like I was there with them. I felt like, you know, we're joyriding around town together. We're hanging out on your jet together. We're like going to get McDonald's at 1 a.m. together. Like we are hanging out backstage before your show together. Like people want, the thing that makes a profile on a musician pop is like those intimate personal details. Like all the money stuff and the financial impact and like the social impact, like that's great. And there is a certain group of people that's going to care about that. But like, if you want to reach, I think if you want to reach a broader audience, like just tell a good story about fascinating people. I really think that's all it takes. And I don't feel like I got to know the group any better through the different variety pieces that came out last week.
Yeah, I think even when you say like it's for the industry, right? It's for the industry people. No one talked in that article about their online concert, Bang Bang Con, breaking records and having 750,000 people watching. No one talked about how they broke records selling a physical album before 5 million copies of a physical album before it came out, when no one still does that. Like they didn't talk about Big Hit doing having a first half of 2020 with a considerable profit, when 87% of that profit, if I'm not mistaken, is based on BTS. Like you're gonna say it's gonna all about the numbers and financial and their standing, and then you bring some nobody from some university to talk about religion.
Yeah, that was kind of strange. I do feel, you know, I just feel like boy bands have existed for almost 70 years now. Like I feel like we should be closer. I just feel like we should have a better understanding of like pop artists and fandoms in general at this point. Like,
Yeah.
like you wouldn't get some religious studies professor to come in and talk about Taylor Swift in an article about her, or like Harry Styles. It doesn't make sense. I feel like there's this I don't know. I guess there's this temptation to like talk about BTS because like yes, they are like they at this point like they are global brand ambassadors and they are like agents for social change and they are hugely influential people on all these different, you know, platforms and in all these different contexts. But like I think there's this temptation to talk about them as if they're like, I don't know, not human anymore.
Examine and analyze and understand how it works.
Yeah. And it's like they're still just like 7 dudes who are like friends. They hang out. Like most of those guys are my age. Some of them are younger than me. Like I want to know what like a group of guys like me, like how they live when they're not busy being the biggest band in the world. Like, I don't know, humanizing your subjects is like the first lesson of writing a profile, especially about famous people.
Yeah, and actually, like Big Hit and BTS are so good at doing exactly that. That's why people relate to them so much. They're not idols. They're not even if a song about how like being defined as idols was something that tore them apart because on the inside, not from each other, because they in Korea, like idols is this more manufactured or produced music, where being an artist is you put yourself out there, and people immediately told them, oh, you're no longer rappers, you're idols now. And so for RM and Suga, oh, it's so weird to call them that. For Namjoon and Yoongi, it tore them apart, like from the inside, to be defined like that, and asking to redefine themselves and understand who they are now, that people no longer refer to them as artists. Like Namjoon was known even before he was in Big Hit. Like Yoongi saw a clip of him even before he auditioned to Big Hit. Like he was already starting to make a name for himself. So to all of a sudden have all those people that saw you as an artist turn their back on you and call you an idol, and then have this article that was supposed to be about BTS start with, oh, they're idols. It's just so weird. And BTS constantly share their flaws. They share their problems. They share what they do for fun, like how one of them loves bicycles and one of them loves to paint and do video edits and all those stuff. And they have a whole show now, which you probably haven't seen. It's called In the Soup, where they just like Big Hit took them for like 7 days, 3 days and 3 days, or 3 days and 4 days, dumped them in this like, amazing house in the forest on a river, and they play Lego, they shoot, they play ping pong, they cook. Like that's what they do. They read books, they do yoga. It's just 7 guys hanging out. And And you see that it's like the most human thing ever. And all of a sudden they're sitting there in this room, and then one of them starts playing the piano, and all of a sudden they're writing a song together.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that, you get to experience all that. And this article just made them seem like so fake and not human, and try to analyze like what about them made them special, when it's just that they share who they are and people connect with it. It's not that complicated.
I think, and yeah, I mean, like you said, BTS and Big Hit, like, there's already so much behind the scenes content about their lives. Like, people can go on Weverse and like learn more about them than they would from reading any magazine profile on them. I feel like writers are often tempted to over-explain their appeal, or I guess they underestimate what readers are already bringing to the table as far as background knowledge goes. It's like we don't have our heads in the sand. Like we know that BTS is a hugely popular artist. We know that they're a global phenomenon. We know that they had the #1 song in the country just a week ago. Like it's not a mystery. Like anybody who's choosing to read any story about BTS already has a certain amount of knowledge coming to the table. Like, just, I don't know, give us a glimpse into their lives. Just make it fascinating. And, you know, for crying out loud, include some more quotes from them and not from these random people that we don't care about.
And I love how they always like push it towards it's their social media presence, when every artist today has the same access to social media just like them. Like everyone has a YouTube account, everyone has a Instagram or Twitter or whatever. They all have that option.
Mm-hmm.
With BTS, it's one of them can go on Weverse and say, oh, let's play a game together, and like give a password to one of those, to a game, and like do a group game together. Like it happens. They do that sometimes. Mm-hmm. Or he can come up at 3 a.m. and post a picture completely random because he just felt like it. Or instead of going to after parties when they win awards, they go online and talk to fans. And so few artists choose to share so much of themselves with fans. But that's what it comes down to. That's why people are so connected with them.
Yeah.
It's not the fact they use social media, it's how they use it and why they use it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Totally it. Yeah. I mean, everybody has the exact same tools. It's just like how much you want to take advantage of them.
Yeah. And to just say, oh, it's because of that they're successful. It's just so stupid.
Yeah. They didn't reinvent the wheel. Like these things existed already. They just found more engaging ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just that article. I was reading it and I felt disappointed by everything. It just kept getting. It's not the thing is it's not the worst article we've read. Mm-mm. The THR articles was much worse, but it completely takes the wind off yourselves when you know like they did this whole cover to have more of visibility for the Grammy.
Well, and even from a publishing perspective, like that's a lot of work and a lot of resources and time and effort that goes into that on the magazine's part. And I just wish that like I got more from it. Like I finished the story and I was just thinking like, that's it. You know, how much time did you spend with them? You had access that people, you know, writers dream of, that like I would never in my wildest dreams like have access to somebody that famous. Like it's just an enviable position to be in. And it just was, was a little underwhelming. It wasn't bad, and I don't want to put dirt on anyone's name, but it started really good. You know, that first paragraph, the scene setting where they came out on stage during the concert, I was like, okay, this is fun, this is cool, this is some flashy writing, let's see where we go. And then it just kind of became a very like academic kind of by the book sort of story.
Yeah, if you could interview BTS, what would you ask?
Oh my gosh. I saw you ask Brian Byrne this, and I started thinking about it last week. But I'll tell you what, I don't know. I don't think that I have an answer for that. If given the opportunity, I would obviously have, a whole notebook full of questions that I would hope to get to. But really, I would want to just like be a fly on the wall. Like I would want to go and hang out in that giant rented house with them and just like play ping pong or like watch, be a fly on the wall in their music making progress and just like get to know them better. I would really love to talk about like, the themes that they bring up in songs like Black Swan, like how their relationship with their art has maybe ebbed and flowed over the years, how, how they've been able to create, maybe if they were in like a mental health slump, how they've been able to work through like these real personal issues and like their own turmoil and still be able to produce, and like what it means to them, to kind of cling to each other and their fans in those times. Just kind of like personal things that I think are universal. You don't have to be a famous musician to identify with those issues. But really just like get to the core of like what makes them human beings.
Yeah, I would love someone to just do a full spread about their lyrics and their music. Like you said, like actually talk about Black Swan and how it came to be, and have they ever felt something like that? And how did they overcome it and find love in music again? Because we know they've been through hard times. And Jungi's mixtape of Augusty, that first one, he talks about mental struggles. And have someone just do an in-depth article about their music. That's what they're here for. Like even that Variety article mentioned about them being apolitical, and they kept going about the Black Lives Matter, which isn't important, and the fact that they donated was big, because in today's world, most pop stars love staying apolitical and not make comments. But BTS, despite what they said, and it's not that they're political against someone, they're angry about society, and they show about how society is, and they show it since their first song. Like No More Dream was about being crushed by expectations from your parents, and to the point that you no longer have a dream. You just stuck on that conveyor belt of getting good grades and getting into a good school, and without any other choice beside that. And they constantly have that. They have a song called Am I Wrong that came out in a very troubling time in Korea, that quoted politicians directly. I still don't know how they got to do it live on a TV show. It's really incredible. And that song is basically saying, this world is crazy, it's fucked up, and we need, am I wrong for saying that and trying to do something about it? Or is am I the one who's crazy, or is the world crazy? Like, what's going on? And they've always had a statement to make. And you see people like Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite, and he's revered. And like that article referenced him too. He said, oh, it's because the Korean government put money into entertainment, which is true, they did. But at that time, like Big Hit was a company on the verge of bankruptcy. I doubt they got a lot of money from the government. So you have a person like Bong Joon-ho who is being revered for his sociological statements and all that, which he should be. He's an amazing film director, but BTS has a lot of the same messages, and they're being disregarded because of the K-pop label and that boy band label, and no one really bothers to take a look in. And as a fan, it's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. You said it better than I could. I hope that, I just hope that as they continue to build their stature, especially in the United States, that people feel compelled to go digging and look into their lyrics and look into their artistry and kind of just understand what they're all about.
Yeah. Do you think liking BTS and being a bit biased towards them makes writing articles about them better or worse?
Okay. I think that liking, I don't think that liking an artist precludes you from writing honest, objective articles about them. I think the idea that, you can't write about them because you're like a fanboy, or more often a fangirl, because like very rarely do men in media get told that they're not allowed to write about an artist because they're a fan of them. It's typically women, typically about pop groups like BTS. I don't think that makes it harder. I think that being a fan of something increases the quality of your writing because you've invested yourself in this thing. You understand, you're able to dig below the surface, and you're able to make connections both within like the band's own artistry and their own history, and like the context in which they're operating, like on a bigger scale, like within the music industry, that you wouldn't be able to if you were just like, reading some stats or some footnotes off a Wikipedia page and trying to like make sense of it in an article. I mean, I think there's a line to be drawn, if you find yourself so invested in any sort of fandom, or if you kind of just, stan something blindly, then no, you probably shouldn't be writing about it no matter what we're talking about. But I think part of being a cultural writer, a cultural critic, is like always knowing yourself and being able to kind of judge your distance from a subject, and to try to keep enough distance to like maintain your discretion. But in general, I was just talking to my wife about this the other day. Like, I don't think I found, probably, at least in as long as I can remember, I have never read a profile on an artist written by a writer who didn't like the artist. Like, you're never going to see somebody go out and do like a profile on like Bruce Springsteen and they don't like Bruce Springsteen. That will literally never happen. So no, I don't think being a fan affects. I think being a fan does improve the quality of writing.
It's an asset to be a fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it just means that I think it deepens your knowledge and gives you a richer perspective. There are so many good writers out there right now. Like Lenica at the Atlantic, I think she writes, she's got some of the best analysis I've seen on the group, and she's like made no bones about like her fandom. Like, she loves this group, and it reflects it in her writing.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I couldn't agree more. I think when you know something, you're able to look, like you said, beyond the surface and more in depth, and give the whole story, or give a better part of it. And yeah, but if you want to read an article by someone who doesn't like and does a profile piece, that's the Hollywood Reporter. We're gonna wrap this up here. Hopefully we'll get to do this again, because there's so much more we want to know. But this was really fun, Brian. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. This was great. Again, this is my first time on a podcast, so thanks for giving me the opportunity. I had a lot of fun, and I'm sure that as long as BTS keeps making moves, I'll have more stuff to write about. So I'm sure that we'll always have more topics to add to the conversation.
Definitely. It's like, keep rolling here. So thank you, Brian, and thank you everyone for watching. And I hope you stay tuned and subscribe to the channel, and that you liked it, and send purple hearts Brian's way.
Thanks, y'all. I appreciate it. I'll send them back.
Thank you. Bye. And we're done.
표정이 이토록 다른 다운